when you did that, I mean, but you would still issue an opinion, right? Would you still give an opinion on that? County's ability to issue additional debt in future?
No, I don't opine on that. The statistical section here that you're looking at that does begin on page 100, that entire section does not get audited by me because it's just a 10-year compilation of data. It's not part of the fiscal year's information that we audited, so it's part of this document. But if the opinion up front that I referred to earlier tells you that certain sections in here were not audited by us, and this is one of those sections. I don't have a way to go back and look at 10 years worth of some of this information, personal income, population. I don't try to verify those types of things.
Jeff, look at page 101, Jeff Black. 101 is where he references table 11 not being required, counties versus towns, or towns versus counties.
Okay.
Well, we spent a lot of money looking for this table, so I'm sure there'll be a discount.
I'll work it in next year.
You're on agenda item 6.
I know.
Okay.
So are we going to see that table or not?
No, there is no table to see.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Underwood, you want to go back for a couple?
Yeah, I just want to ask a question. So when you were doing the audit then, if there is a recommendation for a procedure change, then what's up? Then that's just based on best practices.
Correct.
Then if there's a blatant disregard for a procedure that is in place, you'd call that a serious...
It would still make the list.
It was right. I would hope
Yes.
so.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
There's really two types of deficiencies. There's one, a deficiency where we don't have a control in place, and we probably should and can.
Correct.
And then there's a deficiency where we have the controls or the procedures in place, and we just disregard them and don't follow them.
Correct.
Both of those could still end up on the list.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. I think
You had one
that,
more, Mr. Chairman.
One more.
Page 65, because I had it marked, actually, that's why I knew where it was. Does this $6,984,555 include the utility debt that we forgave, or is that still in this number? Since I don't know when, I don't remember when we did it.
That shouldn't be there.
should not be.
That was done after June 30th, so anything that has to do with that utility receivable is still in the 2012 audit. We
Okay.
did that in August.
She said that anything we did the utility write-off in August, so anything, this was finished June 30th, so it will be in there.
$6 million? So we're $4 million from the 6. I guess that's my.
I don't think that's.
No, that can't be right, because we're back at 11,
We talked about $11 million.
which is what they said we had.
This is
I'm talking about the net
2011.
asset
This is a
page.
restatement of
Oh,
2011.
which one is one Jeff's on?
Page 65 is the net
That's a
asset.
restatement of 11,
That was
2011.
June 30th,
Not
2011.
2012, so that was year before last, not last year.
Okay.
That's a restatement of the financials from the year before.
From the year before.
Here it is, fine print. I just didn't see
It says 2011 on the top.
2011.
Yep, I see it.
Okay. All right, Mr. Garber, it's been a pleasure. I think we will have some more questions at a later point in time.
Not a problem.
For everyone else, we are going to, tomorrow morning, somewhere close to 8:30, put our audit and the CAFRA out on the county website. If you'd like to see it yourself, it'll be out there on the county website. We will not, under any circumstances, release your recommendations, because that would be like giving the key, the combination to the safe away. So we're not going to release any of those, but we will have, just in case you would like, the CAFRA and the audit report itself out on the website tomorrow. All right, Mr. Cully, you also said that many of the things that were mentioned you have addressed already.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. We've been working on some of these since they brought them up to our attention to try to get corrected. The things that are within our control, some of those things belong to some outside agencies that will require some additional work to see that they're brought into compliance. But the thing with the gas cards are being reviewed by all department heads, just like they asked to get those straight. We're not paying any invoices without all the backup documentation on the credit card from the outside departments. They had those in their office but weren't supplying those to finance. We do have that. We will not be paying those any longer. So I think most of the things that are mentioned in the recommendations have been fixed. If you read in the back of the audit, there have been basically a corrective action plan written by the various folks that were written up with the material or significant findings, and they've issued their corrective action plan on how they were going to deal with those things, and those are in the audit themselves. And so those are already being taken care of, and as they said, they're going to be checking all that stuff to make sure it's being done correctly now.
Okay. And the last thing, you did, not for you, it's really for the rest of the audience, you did this audit not only of the county government, everything that reports under the County Administrator Board of Supervisors, you also audited the constitutional officers and social services.
That's correct, and the school board.
And the schools.
Yes, sir.
And you found issues everywhere.
We tried.
Schools, sheriff, social services, all over, and we're working on those.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Garber, again, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you all very much.
And look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
All righty, moving on to appointments. Caroline High Design Task Force. Mr. Underwood, I think that was you? Yes, you're the only one left.
I talked to Mr. Wright, and he's going to serve.
Mr. Wright's going to serve?
Yes.
Okay. Motion?
I guess, so I'm going to appoint, it was between the two of us, is that correct?
No, you could appoint any one person that you and the school board representative agree to. It's up to you.
Well, I talked to Mr. Wright, and he agreed to serve, so I'd make a motion that we appoint Mr. Mac Wright to the position of the Caroline High School Improvement Task Force.
I saw him. Where did he go?
Second.
All right, that's a great choice because he was a builder. He should know a lot about that. Motion made by Mr. Underwood, seconded by Mr. Seeley. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion carries unanimously. We have a Rappahannock Area Alcohol Safety Action Program representative. Mr. Danny Carter served on that before. He said he's willing to serve again. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Mr. Akers, seconded by Mr. Taylor. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. The next one is the Hanover Caroline Community Corrections Criminal Justice Board, CCJB. Interesting. Okay.
Make a motion to appoint Mrs. Gatewood.
Thank you very much.
Mrs. Gatewood.
Second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Akers, seconded by Mr. Seeley. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. And the last one is the Rappahannock Emergency Medical Services Council. And in that case, our appointee, Mr. Sprouse, no longer resides in the county and no longer volunteers on EMS. So he had to meet one of those two criteria and doesn't meet either one. So we need someone there. Board members, if you'd like to discuss that, we'll come up with somebody in 26. All righty? Consent agenda. Anything to be removed from the consent agenda? There's basically not a lot here.
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to remove the minutes. I haven't looked at them, and they came via email last night. I just haven't had time.
Email? All right. We'll put minutes on the consent again. Aren't the minutes on the website already? Oh, okay. They're on the website already, but they're not posted yet. Okay.
Right.
Be ready by the 26th?
Yeah, I just haven't had a chance.
Okay. We'll do B and C, warrants, and the Planning Commission schedule.
So moved.
Second. Motion made by Mr. Taylor, seconded by Mr. Akers to approve consent agenda items B and C. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. That motion carries, which takes us to a break before the 7:30 public comments. I have 7:24. We're going to take a 15-minute break in real time, so we'll be back about 7:40. So we'll stand adjourned. We will reconvene the Caroline County Board of Supervisors meeting. We are at agenda item, actually not agenda item, but we're at the public comment section of our board meeting. At this point in time, any citizen that would like to speak regarding any issue that's not a public hearing, which we have none today, may do so. We really like to keep these positive and try to figure out ways to improve the county. So at this time, I'll ask any citizen that would like to speak in the public comment section if they would come forward, state their name and their voting district, please. And you have a 3-minute time limit. Thank you, Mr. Culley. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Gary Gray. I'm from the Bowling Green District, but I have a business in the Mattaponi District and serve customers throughout most of the county. I'd like to thank you for your tireless efforts being on the board. I know it's a very, very difficult job to try to please everybody. So I want to thank you for your long-term commitment and relationship to Caroline County. I have got a flyer I'd like to pass out.
You give me Mr. Parton.
My request tonight is to make a modification to our hunting ordinance in Caroline County. And currently we have a deer season where you're allowed to use archery equipment, black powder or primitive weapons, and a shotgun. And what I'd like to do is request a modification to the shotgun season where you could actually hunt with a rifle. The reason for this is we're getting a constantly change in the deer population, and that population has experienced some complications with chronic wasting disease and some other things. And if you're able to hunt from a deer stand or from a location where you can watch and look at these deer, it makes a very easy management process to be able to cull any of the weak or undernourished animals to try to improve the conditions of the herd. From a safety standpoint, for 2012-2013 hunting season, there were 14 incidents involving guns. Of those 14, one of them was a rifle. So the majority of the accidents that are involved in hunting are shotgun related. Also, if you're hunting with a rifle, an example of a good gun would be a .243. You're shooting a 100-grain bullet. You're shooting a black powder gun. You're shooting a 500-grain bullet. It's a rifle. It's just called a primitive rifle. So it's got a scope and very similar to our modern rifles. So we're also experiencing another problem in the county. It's been over the last few years, and that's the increase of coyotes. And so anybody that's still hunting would basically have the proper equipment with field glasses for evaluating the deer, but they also see a coyote and they want to shoot it. That could also be done at a longer range than you could do with a shotgun. Currently, counties like Henrico allow shooting with a rifle, Spotsylvania County. This request is basically for private lands, so I'm not making any special requests for Fort A.P. Hill. They'd have to make their own rules and regulations, or any of the public land that belongs to the wildlife management.
Okay.
If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
All right. Real quick, Mr. Gray, we don't normally have a question and answer, but the state allows rifle hunting?
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay. And a .223 would be a Bushmaster, wouldn't it?
Yes, it could be. We can move in any size caliber. The recommended minimum caliber for a whitetail would be a .223, but you could shoot up to as much as a .50 caliber. It's quite an overkill. But
Not a lot of meat left after that one, is it?
no.
Okay. All right. The board will take this into consideration. We appreciate you coming forward.
Okay, and I'm available with my phone information, and
Yes, sir.
feel free to contact me with any questions. The game department tries to get their rules and regulations out in late April. If you had a chance to look this over and make a move on it, we could get that included for the hunting season coming up this year.
Okay. Well, thank you again. I'm going to ask Mr. Culley to make sure we run this by the state authorities and check with the sheriff. And if everything checks out, we'll put it on our agenda for the 26th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding any matter? Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding any matter? Is there anyone else? Hearing none, the public comment section is declared closed. And now we come to unfinished business, agenda item 4, the proposed boundary adjustment for the town of Port Royal. I guess at this point we have several steps in this whole process. As Mr. Taylor wanted to know at our last meeting, we need to find out if the majority of the board is willing to move forward with the boundary adjustment. If we say yes, then we have to decide if there are any conditions to a boundary adjustment that the board would like to look at. If we say no, we move to the next agenda item. So, is there a majority of the board that would like to continue discussing the town of Port Royal's boundary adjustment?
Yes, for,
I'm just asking for a yes or no.
yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, then that's a majority for, I can count. So we have a majority, so we're going to continue discussing the boundary adjustment for the town of Port Royal. Now, it's my understanding that we have to hold a public hearing on the boundary adjustment. I seem to recall we held a public hearing for Bowling Green.
But isn't that after the adjustment's done?
Could I say something? Mr.
Short.
Chairman? Okay.
Sure.
Sure. Okay.
Because we're trying to conduct the business, not convince people what to do.
Okay, and I don't want to convince people at this point. But what I would like to say is that based on the discussions that we had the last meeting, and Mr. Akers was not here at the last meeting, so I would just like to say one or two things for his benefit, since he was not here, if that's okay.
Well, no, I mean, we just need to go with the procedure, what we do next.
Okay, but I think the procedure will be better dealt with if I could say a couple of things, if you would.
Don't take a long time.
Okay, all right. As I said, the town of Port Royal came last meeting basically to ask for some assistance. And that assistance would be given through a boundary adjustment. And basically what it calls for is the bringing in of some businesses, some identified businesses into the town. And the real issue is the funding that the board would give up or give control to the town, you know, if this adjustment is made. Since that time, we've had time to talk and to think about what we want to do. And what I would ask the board to do is that we allow staff to work with the town council in looking at the boundary adjustment. If I could get the board to agree in concept to some form of boundary adjustment and look at those businesses that we've identified. I'm not asking for a vote tonight because it's not a final procedure. But if staff would be allowed to work with them, if I can get commitment from the board for some form of boundary adjustment, and we go from there.
Okay, you're good. All right. Excellent. The one thing the town council needed, because they have a grant application has to be in by the 26th. So for their grant application, you can now include the fact that the county is willing to work with the boundary adjustment. That gives you time to get your grant in by the 26th. You get to move ahead. We are still going to have a lot of discussion. But I like your statement. Had it been a motion, we could have been moved ahead. Just say so moved.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion's made by Mr. Taylor, seconded by Mr. Seeley, that we will ask staff and, of course, legal counsel to begin or to prepare what would be a boundary line adjustment for the town of Port Royal and the county of Caroline. What we will also do is ask staff to contact all of the board members to see if there are any conditions, considerations that the board would like to have included in the boundary adjustment, such as what we did with the town of Bowling Green with their boundary adjustment. We phased in the funding or the revenue loss so the county wasn't hurt right away, and it was 5 years, you know, something like that. There may be some things like that. My personal thing is we need to have some input into, we the county need to have some input into their water system design, or at least consideration, because if all else fails and they decide not to become a town, the county will own that resource. So while we're planning something, we ought to have a little input into it just in case. Okay? That's the only thing. So did I carry your motion yet?
Nope, you haven't
You
called for the
haven't
vote.
called the vote.
Freudian. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Okay, the motion carries unanimously. We are going to move forward with the boundary adjustment, but there will be, I promise you, much more discussion to come. Okay? That takes care of agenda item 4. Outstanding, Mr. Taylor. Where's my Davenport?
Thank you.
Okay. Now our next agenda item is the continued discussion of the county 5-year financial plan.
Sir, Mr. Chairman,
And,
members of the
before you
board.
start,
Yep.
we'd asked a representative from Davenport to come, bring us the 5-year plan interactive, so we could actually see it. There was some discussion when we first saw the 5-year plan about it looked like a worst-case scenario with no additional revenue. Some of us think there's going to be additional revenue in the county. Some of us think that we should cut some spending in the county. So we basically want you to look at it, and I understand during our break that there have been some updates to the last one. So if you'll give us the updates, and thank you, Mrs. Hall. And then we're going to just ask you some questions to kind of do it interactively. Oh, well, I'm not going to die by PowerPoint.
What's that?
I've done death by PowerPoint, so you're not going to give me a PowerPoint, but we just want the spreadsheet.
Yeah, what we were going to do, if it's all right, Mr. Chairman, we can skip ahead, but what we've basically done is taken what you saw in January, and we've updated it and just highlighted in red anything that's changed versus January. So to take you from January to today, I can take you through a couple pages, if it's okay, show you what's different.
You're not going to give me all 25 pages.
No, sir.
Go.
You want to go to presentation mode too?
What's that? Yeah, hang on a second.
You can just go to the top where it says slideshow. View show.
We got it. All right, so we will skip ahead here. All right, so overview, you've seen this all. Upshot here, you saw a initial estimate in January, and what we've basically done since then is to roll it forward and basically tie FY14 so that it matches your proposed budget. So you see a bunch of stuff in red, that's really the stuff that's changed versus what you saw in January. Our various goals and objectives, obviously keep our fund balance where it needs to be, et cetera, et cetera. We're basically basing things off of your 13 budget and projecting, based on your 13 budget, changing things with various percentages. We have all your operations, capital, schools, utilities is all built in here. So major assumptions to kind of cut right to the chase. On the revenue side, what we basically see, first red section there, we have the 5-cent proposed real estate tax increase for the FY14 budget. So that was not built in back in January, that's built in today. We'll be able to play with, as we kind of walk through this, we'll be able to play with the growth assumption on the real estate side. Second major change versus what you saw in January. In January, there was the assumption that the personal property tax rate was kept where it is with the decreased values. What you'll see today is an assumption that that personal property tax rate is equalized, so you will have basically the same amount of revenue as you did previously. That's a big revenue number for you. It equates to about 8 pennies in the real estate tax rate. So what you saw in January, this will be about 8 cents better, roughly speaking, than what you saw in January. You see those other various growth rates. We'll be able to play with those in a couple minutes. Other revenue assumptions, basically assuming the YMCA is carrying themselves. Utilities, you can see what we have built in there in terms of new connections. We've assumed just moderate growth in terms of the user revenues, and in terms of new connections, we have 25 built into FY14, 30 thereafter. We can play with that number as you go forward. And obviously thinking about the economy, sequestration, we don't know exactly what that impact's going to be. Nobody does, but we put that up as a footnote for you. Expenditures is largely the same as what you saw back in January. We've basically modified your debt service such that it matches up to your budget. Other than that, no big changes. Expenditures largely growing at 2% with the exception of some of the benefits, some of the new positions, et cetera, that are built in. Other than that, they're largely growing at 2%, which is a pretty moderate clip. Basically thinking about inflation, that's about it. So you roll that all together, we'll get a bunch of numbers here. And this might even be easier to see on your handout, because you actually have this whole thing in a handout in front of you. But what you basically see, and this is on page, bear with me a second, get myself to the right page in the handout. Page 7. So what you see on page 7, you see all the various revenues, all the various expenditures. Take your eye down to line 43. And what you see there is when you have all those assumptions built in, we're still using a little bit of fund balance this year, that amount being about $625,000. And that equates to about 2.5 cents on the real estate tax rate. So as we're thinking about the budget, thinking about future years, basically your budget as it's proposed right now would use about $625,000 of fund balance. Equates to about 2.5 cents on the real estate tax rate. And as we project all those various things forward, and I think that's the important point on this particular page, what we're trying to do is help you think not just about this budget, but think about next year's budget, et cetera, et cetera. As you project that forward, based on these particular assumptions, that 2.5 cents grows largely because what we've assumed is we try to be more conservative on the revenue side. We have, especially on the real estate side, we basically have that being basically flatlined into the future as a 0.5% growth built in there. And then on the expenditure side, we have things growing at 2 or 3% a year. So what you see is, maybe you call that worst case. Worst case, that 2.5 cents grows to about 7 cents over the next 5 years going out to 2018. I'm not saying it's what's going to happen, but you're thinking about kind of a worst case, limited growth, this probably is it. Back in January, this was about 10 cents. So again, this looks a whole lot better than it did back in January. Importantly, this page includes no new capital. So we're talking about funding new capital projects, new borrowings for schools, radio systems, et cetera. This particular page does not include any of that, and we'll add that in here as we keep moving forward. So, new capital, thinking about FY14 and 15, which is next year's budget and the year after. You see a variety of updates from what you saw in January. Basically, we have the radio system built in here, $6.3 million. It's down a little bit from the last estimate you saw. We're assuming that first payment for that, it's not going to hit you until FY16. So we've built a couple of years of cushion in there cash flow-wise. We've introduced some cash funding of projects, which I think is important. I'd like to see you get back to that. Again, doing some wells, smaller projects with some cash. Some of the vehicles, in terms of the new sheriff's vehicles, do those with cash. We do have the 5 replacement sheriff's vehicles in there. There's a shorter-term lease. School buses in there is a shorter-term lease. And the big item at the bottom, $25 million for the high school and Madison Elementary School in terms of renovations. We've put that in there, built that in. You'll see what it looks like. And basically assume that first payment wouldn't hit until FY15. So not next year's budget, but the year after. So you move over to page 9. Roll all those things together. And you can see what we've assumed in terms of interest rate, in terms of various maturities. Interest rates are obviously good right now. We've used interest rates that are probably a little bit above where the market is right now, but not a ton. No guarantee that rates are going to stay as good as they are right now into the future. But basically, in the shorter term things, you see the radio system at the top of the page. We assumed at 290 in terms of the interest rate, done over 15 years. That's a shorter term kind of project. The school project, we've assumed 4% right now, over 20 years for that $25 million. And then if you take your eye all the way to the right side of the page in that top table, we've basically equated the annual payment that you get to a tax equivalent impact, meaning for the radio system, we've estimated that's going to be about $630,000 a year. That's about 2.5 pennies on the real estate tax rate. Same thing for the schools. That's about $1,875,000 a year, roughly speaking. That's about 7.5 pennies on the real estate tax rate. So with that being said, take your eye to the bottom section of the page there. We've tried to wrap together both the operational projection as well as the various capital here. And what you see is basically what we think we'd need over the next 5 years, given the growth assumptions we've talked about, which maybe they're on the low side, hopefully not, or hopefully they're on the low side, hopefully they're going to be higher. But we see is 2.5 cents in 2.5 cents, excuse me, in 2014. 15, you have 8.1, largely because of that school. 7.6 pennies of that is tied to the school. FY16, there's another 4.8 cents, call it 5 cents, tied largely to the radio system as well as some of the operational stuff.